And Ms. Lyons, I'd like to start with you. In your assessment, why is it important for individuals to observe the election administration process?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I really believe that elections are the bedrock of our republic, and our republic is reliant upon public trust in that process. And public trust in that process is reliant upon knowing the process and participating in it. And so I think it's really important to be able to have transparency in our elections so that people can observe at every stage, not just the challenger stage, but at every stage, so that that transparency breeds trust.
Can you describe for us the process for election observation and how that happens in your county and whether election observers have to be credentialed?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, Madam Chair?
Sure. Could you describe for us the process of election observation in your county? What stages of the process do election observers get to view, and are they credentialed?
Yes, thank you for thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Political parties, by right, are able to appoint election poll challengers, and they are credentialed. All of the credentials must meet a certain template, which is outlined in the manual provided by the state. So every challenger is credentialed. They are required to present their credential, but may not display it during the time in which citizens are voting. Other organizations who have an interest in election integrity or voters' rights, they also are permitted to credential challengers. Those individuals must apply at the county clerk level, and they have to do that within 20 to 30 days before the election. Within 2 days, the clerk must either accept or reject that application. So once that is set, they will know who is credentialing challengers for each election. Every local clerk must Every county clerk must notify the local clerk of each organization or party that is credentialing challengers within the jurisdiction, and then each local clerk is required to make sure all of our precincts and county boards are aware of who is able to present credentials and serve as poll challengers. They may observe any part of the process. They play a role. They stand behind the table to inspect or watch all of the election material, the voter applications. They may not approach a voter. They may not speak to a voter. They may not imply that they are able to assist a voter. Any conversation that happens, any verbal interaction that happens with a challenger is established with a challenger liaison, one of our election inspectors designated to converse with the challengers themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Cunnington, would you describe for us, please, how congressional observers are different from observers from political parties or representing a particular candidate?
Thank you, Chair Lee. That's a really important question because it is quite a different distinction. As some of the witnesses have already noticed here, a political party observer is typically operating under state law or local rules, as was just described by the county clerk. The Congressional Observer Program is operating under a direct constitutional authorization. It is a vitally important role to build that independent record in the event of a contest. And so, arguably there are aspects of things that we might need to be a little bit closer to, areas that we might want to view for different reasons that maybe the regular, depending on what the state laws in a given area are, they may prohibit regular political party observers from being able to see. In my experience, we never really had that much of an issue in the places that I was deployed to. But obviously we have been aware that there are concerns from state and local election administrators where the CHA observers are deployed. And that's where I think an additional citation in the federal code would be really helpful in order to be able to do additional educational outreach to the election administrator community.
And would you expand on that? In your testimony, you mentioned a citation of convenience. Would you tell us a little bit more about that and what it is that you think would be helpful?
Well, so, obviously, state and local election administrators are, particularly during election season, always, under the gun. They're always working really hard. I worked 29 straight days in 2016 as a local election administrator, and I wasn't even, the person that worked the most days in a row at our county board of election. And so, when somebody shows up with a letter from the Committee on House Administration saying, I'm an election observer here under this additional constitutional authorization, I have the ability to maybe do a little bit more than what your state or local laws or rules, would normally allow. I can understand why those election administrators would be a little bit, want additional information. Having something specifically in federal code to be able to point to ahead of time, committee staff are always talking to Secretary of States, talking to local election administrators before election periods. Being able to really do some educational outreach around a specific piece of code, I think would really make it less of a struggle during the actual election period in which congressional observers are deployed.
Thank you. And Ms. Taylor, would you describe for us what you consider to be meaningful access to observe the elections process?
Yes, meaningful access is actually decided by each different state as to what they think is proper access. What we think it should be is they have the ability to hear when a name is called, that they have the ability to see that only one ballot is being handed to the voter. When they at each section, that they have the opportunity to see what is going on. No one wants to see anyone's private information, but we do want to make sure that the person who walks in the door is who they say they are, that they only have one ballot, and that they proceed with that ballot in an appropriate manner. This is very difficult to do when you have mail-in ballots. In the mail-in ballot arena, you want to make sure that the laws that govern that state's mail-in ballots are applied correctly. If there is supposed to be a witness signature, if there is supposed to be the last 4 digits of a social security number on the envelope, to make sure that those things are actually where they're supposed to be, and to make sure that when the ballots come out, that it is put into the proper place.
Thank you. And then a final question from Ms. Lyons. Do you believe that meaningful election observation builds voter confidence in election results?
100%. I believe that anytime a citizen can engage and participate in their election, it gives them more ownership in that election, and they can see for themselves. Again, don't just take my word for it, but come see for yourself. And I really believe that that does a lot to breed voter confidence as well as public trust.